The first session for today is the role of technology in open knowledge. It's a panel discussion which is moderated by Vidhu. Welcome, Vidhu.
Hi everyone, can we have our panel speakers on the stage? We don't have Ravi. I hope you're not the only one. Well, welcome on day 2 and to this panel about the role of technology in the open source space. We've got an esteemed panel today, which has been on the crossroads of knowledge building, of open technology, of enterprise systems, etc. We're going to build up a conversation about what is it that the communities can learn from the open technology systems and vice versa. How is it that technology can help support communities build stronger knowledge ecosystems and then learn from each other's challenges as industries. I'm going to start with the first question with Vishal. As FOSS United, you've worked very closely with communities in the open source space. What do you think has been the role of technology in general to support communities? What is it that open technology can do better in terms of helping the communities of today's world?
So technology, we feel as an enabler. So at FOSS United, we aim to promote the use of free and open source software, not just software, hardware, design, data. So technology, we can connect people remotely anywhere. So India, being a very big country and very multiple FOSS community working silos in different part of country. So technology can just help to bring all of them together and probably start dialogues which could just start, the idea of creating more open knowledge, more innovation on top of the open knowledge which is already available.
Thank you. Bhuvna, you also work a lot with technologies as well as especially with neurodivergent communities. Where is it and how is it that you envision a true open knowledge ecosystem?
Right. So the culture of open knowledge ecosystems or open source or the FOSS has been going on in parallel with how technology is an and as an accessibility tool, or how technology is accessible for all is more prevalent in marginalized groups and other inclusive communities as well. So with web accessibility or accessibility in technology becoming an essential component these days, that is where neurodiversity is one of the most common, I would say, communities where it needs more traction to know what is required by the neurodivergents to be involved in such technology, to develop these technologies, and also how to involve the neurodiverse communities into creating these products or technology as well. So that's where I've been working with Emergeability to understand in first place how much is this technology has reached to them, and is it really accessible for them, and are they also affordable to get involved, and how as in they get represented and their voices get heard in the open source.
Purity is part of the product team at the foundation. How is it that you feel we can work towards making sure that our communities are being heard? We're building open technologies that can enable communities to work on their different projects better. What is it that they can do in a manner that empowers them better? And what has the foundation been doing in that field in the recent years?
I think we've started having the conversations as recent as March, where there was an open call for communities to come and have conversations around AI. And what what came out very clearly is, from the community aspect, was it was identified that there are opportunities, there are certain threats even to our movement with these open technologies, and what can we do about it? So I think that leveraging on how our model works, we are very collaborative. We know our content, how we bring together our content to be reliable, and I think working together towards seeing what are the different avenues or use cases that work for us. Because I think we are very rooted in our mission and our vision. That still has to remain, and that still has to remain at the root of everything. All the conversations, all the work and all the efforts have to be around that. So I think having those conversations as a start, bringing everyone together in the room, identifying those opportunities, identifying the threats, identifying the next steps, while remaining true to who we are as a movement. Yeah.
Thank you. Venkat, I want to bring you in as well. You've got vast experience in enterprise systems, also working with Indic language knowledge systems. Can you hear me now? Better? Great. Thank you. So Venkat, with your experience of enterprise systems and then bringing it back to Indic language communities, building on knowledge systems that are relevant for Indic language communities, where is it that you think there has been a shift in the past few years? What is it that has become an opportunity for the communities to grow further? And where is it that you think that we're still lacking behind a little bit that we can do better?
Yeah, thank you all for inviting me. That's a very interesting question. See, I worked almost 25 years in the enterprise space, and been associated with a lot of Indian language initiatives, both working with, say, Tamil Nadu government on the Unicode standards, with Microsoft, with Google's, Apple's on many of the Tamil language and Indic language technology that went into it. I think I've definitely seen a remarkable shift in the way that Indian language was an afterthought, an add-on 20-25 years to now. Today, when these companies, they've got all the basics done. Your kernel level work, your framework work, your user interface work, those were, looking back, it looks very simple, very even a bit silly that we spend so much time on font, encoding and all that stuff. But those were the basics, we had to do it. We can't, without the foundation, you can't build it. And I think those days it was very proprietary. I wish open source was available in those days as a big movement so that these could have been accelerated. Today it's very fastly moving because it's open source is taken for almost for granted and it's established itself. And in the cloud space, it's mostly open source other than when you go into the SaaS space. But coming back, I think today a lot of awareness. One of the examples is I'm working closely with a small niche startup on AR/VR solutions they build for enterprise companies. When they build it today, these are large manufacturing companies, pharma companies, virtual reality simulation solutions. Indian language is part of it. I was so happy when I first started working with them that these companies are asking, I want it in Marathi, the virtual language learning experience that you're doing, in Hindi, in Bengali, in Tamil. This was certainly not asked 20 years back. You do an accounting system and the person may not be speaking English, but you are forcing him to learn English. Today, I think I won't say it's gone away. Even if you walk into a supermarket today, billing is still done in English. You may ask for an Indian language, but it's like, it's taken for granted, at least in the metros. It's taken for granted everybody can at least figure out English. I think that's going to definitely change, and technology, I always heard the excuse from the large companies that there's no demand. But I think only when you make it available, people will start using it. You can't say let people ask. I can't ask something that I don't know that I can ask for. 25 years back when I was doing in Clipper, people don't even know that computers could do Tamil or Indian language. Today, I think people know that. So I think it's, as technology providers, as community leaders, we got to provide, keep giving this to the people so that they start using it. And I think that's an Indian language movement, so communities also should be aware that there are a lot of people who are working on local language here. I think more and more we have to do niche solutions, small solutions, local solutions have to be done. And that cannot be done by a multinational, by a large company or anything. It has to be done at the grassroots level. I think you are the people who will be building those localized solutions. Again, when I say local, it need not be Indian language. We confuse these two terminologies. Local means something that is useful for me in Hyderabad or in a particular area at Hyderabad. It need not be making any sense for anyone in Chennai or Bombay or anywhere else. Those are the kind of, we are talking hyper-local in e-commerce and all that, so something equivalent to that. I think that's where things are moving, and the community has a very big role to play. Today, when you go to a CIO, CTO, open source is not a conversation you have to defend or talk about anything. It's again, people understand it. What I like to see from the community is, you as developers, you as engineers, you as architects in your team, encourage your company to contribute back into open source. It's not about only taking. Everybody takes, there's nothing going to be in the pond. So we got to give it back, and your organization solves a particular issue for, say, e-commerce. That could be a module. Don't go and try to sell it to a CIO, CEO that we'll make our entire ERP open source. No company is going to go with that. But a simple module where you solved a currency problem, a conversion problem, so on and so forth. Take it and give it to the open source. From there, build it. And here, Vicky, you are the people who have made community work, so you know how to take it to the community. Sorry for a long answer, but that's the...
Venkat, you brought a great point ahead, and we've been talking about, how open source is changing for the good, perhaps, but changing too fast as well. And that brings, a few new problems, even for the community to adapt so quickly. I want to go back to Bhavna and Vishal. Just understanding, how is it that the community faces these challenges? What is it that, is something that is needed as a push for the communities to also adapt to these disruptive AI or open AI technologies that are coming up far too quickly?
So it's always hard to fight against the proprietary companies. We see that long back. Two OS, an open source OS and versus the proprietary OS fighting against. But definitely the OS, the open source Linux won, right? So when you talk about the language model, it's coming. We have for example, ChatGPT. The fourth model is already there, and there are a lot of people relying on ChatGPT as main source of learning. They just put it there and then get set of information. But we do not know. I was just doing some chat with the ChatGPT, and I asked what is the source of this, and they said there are multiple sources, but I cannot point it to one. Which means, how would I trust that? But now the open source and the community comes here in the picture. How we can come together, collab, and build a model which is as good as, ChatGPT, and at the same time we could inspect where this is coming from, the knowledge, right? So that's when the role of community, the existing open source projects come in the picture, the existing knowledge on internet comes in the picture. And probably more dialogues. Of course, we are not going to win this fight on day zero, but probably years we might win.
Bhavna, do you want to add something there?
Yeah, sure. So the FOSS, usually the world of FOSS is usually backed by communities, volunteers, and people from various groups. So This has always been a thing where, to sustain the contributions, or like to sustain the movements, or like people around it, is always been a challenge around. Whereas, especially while you want diverse voices and various cultural groups to represent, or like to be involved into a development of a goal, or like to move towards something of like going with the theme of open source knowledge movements, or like projects in the open source. So and one such has also been like where now different communities or like projects are focused on now creating paving a way for the open source. For example, the Facebook had the React, and React wasn't open for the communities before, and then while they became open source and when it opened up, now you can see how drastically the framework has developed in various aspects. So that's like the power of how once you take the technology in the hands of communities, then you can definitely expect wonders to happen. But taking that to the communities is where the challenge begins. Like for example, while we take such technology to women from places where they're not digitally connected, or like where they have social constraints, and various other in terms of like remotely engaging and stuff. So these are the places where we still need a lot of improvements, and a lot of probably like strategize the way in which it is more easily contribute, like everyone could contribute in a way that everyone is going to add value to it. And also in communities like these, where does it get lost is while people trying to contribute to certain platform or something, but then in turn they do not understand where their contribution has gone into. So there's always a gap in understanding how valuable is their output going to be, or like how would they be recognized, or like how they'd be how does their contribution creates an impact on the overall development of the community or the project by itself. So those are the factors that leads to challenges. But then of late I think like more awareness and more events and also like taking to the grassroots and stuff has helped in reaching out. And also like I just took a short numbers from the GitHub, and it says like the overall women percentage is like 42.2% at the moment, and that is 21 to 22 year. And in only the technical level, the contribution of women is just increased by 2.3%, and the rest are into leadership and management. This is just about the presence of people in GitHub, not that all good developers need to have a GitHub account, or not all FOSS developers need to have a GitHub account, but GitHub is a major place where people try to build their profile, or developers usually try to have the presence to contribute on GitHub projects. So yeah, this has been the level of diversity and level of contributions in open source.
Purity, I have a bit of a tough question, and I think for tech organizations, we're at a place where we want to be relevant based on the external trends that are coming up. But at the same time, we have to cater back to our communities, back to open source ecosystem in general. Where is it and how is it that organizations can find that balance? And how does that wane when you're building new products or evolving our own products?
Yeah, I think it's a tough balance to keep. In one hand, there's everything happening around you, external trends. They're influencing how users and readers are consuming our content, and then also trying to stay true to the communities and building that resilience. So I think it's not an either or, it's how do we put those two together? How do we listen to our community members when they give us feedback. Like in forums like this, we get direct feedback from communities. We also look at the data. What is the data telling us? What are the analytics tell us? Because sometimes you get to see behavior like page views or how people are editing, how many edits and things like that. And putting that together to form a complete perspective. Then looking outside and seeing what's happening and bringing that together to form, a balanced perspective as, okay, this is what we need to improve, or this is what we need to build. And we're not building for, we are building with all these different perspectives. So I think you can't divorce one from the other. If you do that, we are disadvantaging ourselves, and we stand a chance of not remaining relevant in the world. So it's a mix of both, but also staying true to who we are as a movement. I think that has to remain at the core of everything.
No, definitely. And Venkat, just to ask you on that, I think there is also this urge or sudden need to move quickly again. But how is it that we can do it in a way that it still maintains the trust of the communities? It still makes them a part of, building technologies, but at the same time doing it quickly to, remain relevant while we're doing that. What do you think of from the perspective of bigger enterprises and organizations?
See, certainly the last 20, 25 years, the pace in which releases are being made in the software industry, in the enterprise, is extremely fast. For example, I had worked very closely as a partner with the Microsoft MSN teams in the, say, late 90s or early 2000s. The schedules were 18, 24 months. There's a lot of stories about wanting a simple change is scheduled for 18 months, 24 months. I'm not singling out Microsoft, but that's an example. As a partner, I worked, and that's how schedules were done. Today, the same company, say for Microsoft Office, again, you can watch in their talks, they're doing releases. You go to Microsoft 365 blog page, releases are done every 30 days. That's how fast they are moving. And I think a couple of weeks back, they showed the ChatGPT integration. And this is something probably they worked in the last 5-6 months, if not a little earlier. But that's the kind of speed to integrate something like ChatGPT into Microsoft Office, which is like hundreds of millions of lines of code. I think it's remarkable. Those who have been in the industry to think about, okay, how can I do this, is really, really fascinating. And that, I think, is due to the sophistication of the tools. And large part of those tool chains today are open source. Nobody thinks about a DevOps operation or a thing releasing continuous integration, continuous development. Those are all taken for granted. We don't need to talk about that. Those tools have enabled people to move really fast. And today, all your startups are also moving daily builds, twice a day builds, so on and so forth. So that's the speed. So community also has to keep pace with this. You can't say, I will release my community software every 6 months once, every 1 year once. That doesn't work. You go to, every time I go to WordPress to my blog, I have some 4 things to update. Most of my time is spent on updating. I can set auto updates, but then I'm old school. I like pressing update as if I did something myself. I don't do anything. I just press that update button. But it feels good that I have upgraded to the next version, whatever it means. Probably they just changed a line of comment. And that's the same fascination we get in our phones, right? iPhone and Android today auto updates beautifully. But it gives a sense of satisfaction that I press update and something happens. Sometimes it doesn't boot, but that's a different story. That's an excuse for me to get a new phone then. But so communities have to realize that you have to keep pace. It's not about running that race, it's about the expectation from the consumer. And if you permit me to diverge a little bit, I'll also talk about this. When we talk about open source, it's all open source code, right? But I think we got to think a bit differently. You asked me what is the question, what is the answer? I don't know, like everybody else, I have lots of questions. So I've been always a manager, I've run my own company, so I've always found fault and had people solve the problems for me. So in the open source, it's been source code, but I think with ChatGPT and all these automated tools, no-code platforms, things like that, what is that at the end of the day is being created? The source code, I think probably when it's ChatGPT generated, the value of the source code is going to keep coming down. It's not that it's not important. Is that what you should open, or is the prompt you need to open? I don't know. We got to think about in those directions. What is open source? Somebody was asking me in a conversation we were having privately. ChatGPT is going to generate a code. An app is going to come. Another ChatGPT application is going to call that application or an API, whatever it is. And the third ChatGPT generated application is going to consume. So should we be generating user interfaces at all? Should human be in the loop? Or can it all be API'd and connected? In which case, should we generate open source? Can we generate binary directly? Those are all like tons of questions. Then what is the point of when you generate binaries, what is that you're open sourcing? I don't know. Maybe the others in the panel can think about it.
Vishal, I'm going to put you in this spot and ask if you have an answer for that in a way from what the community wants to hear, and probably even follow up a little bit on, it's been the talk of the town with ChatGPT 4 and even in general about generative AI. How is it that the community has been reactive? I have heard different versions of this. One, the community is excited. They think, on a daily basis, it does help me with content creation. But at the same time, their community members are a little, in a space of a little bit of anxiety of how this is going to change their role. How is it that, will they still be relevant or not? And again, where is it that we find that balance? In the end, the technologies are going to get developed. There are things that are going to move, whether fast-paced or not, that's a separate question. How much involvement of the communities can be there, should be there, is another question that we can put to you. But where do you see the communities are, especially in this region?
So with ChatGPT, in this case, this has been always since the humanity that some new technology comes and just kills thousands, millions of jobs. But fortunately, we have a community who can take some time, take a step back and think what could be done to, let's say, make use of the technology. For example, Industrial Revolution came and killed, a lot of manual jobs. But then people started building more industries and somehow we figured out, and then another revolution came and killed job. Now AI coming in the picture. There are so many AI image generation tool, ChatGPT, the language tool. Now everything boils down to the community, how we come together once again and think of this as a challenge, and rather than reacting like the human nature, let's just shift to ChatGPT or let's use technology. We should just take a step back and then reconsider that whether it is worth questioning and asking the fundamental questions, like if we start relying on a proprietary tools, is this going to make everybody's job secure? So again, I feel more dialogues, more networking, and we have ton of open source tools already. It's just a matter of assembling them together and making use of the knowledge, the data available on the internet already, and probably coming together again. At FOSS United, the reason we started, we know there are a lot of developers, FOSS developers, building things, but again in silos. So the moment all these people come together, either through the in-person events or through the group we have, the forum we have, they get to learn a lot that, okay, the platform I'm building we could use this particular piece of open source technology. So with more building more communities, or just to say, bringing all communities together could just help us a little bit, that what has to be done, and again, probably we'll end up finding a solution to the need, the need of the moment, which is how, like Venkat was saying, since it's Microsoft, ChatGPT is owned by Microsoft, and they have the whole power over, where they can integrate, right, overnight. But and then similarly, Google is having their own language model, AI language model. So how the community, the open source community come, and we have a lot of open source documents tool, how we can come there, and for example, Grammarly has a solution, we have language tool to check our grammatical mistakes. So how again, do we have something, are we working on it, are we talking about it? So yeah.
Thank you. I actually want to counter a little bit to what Venkat was saying, that even communities can choose to move quickly, make updates more quicker. I'm going to go back to Purity, who probably has a lot more experience in terms of dealing with that kind of change. I just feel with models where you work with extensive amount of community members with different backgrounds and experiences, knowledge, it becomes difficult to make updates or improvements in technology on a quicker basis. It needs that much more collaboration. It needs that much more consensus. Improvements or iterations overall of processes need that much more time. And is there something that we've learned in the past about this? How is it that we are still, kind of making sure that we're still relevant at the foundation, at the updates that we do with the communities? And how is it that that process has been with different products that you work on?
Yeah, so, yeah, you're right. Especially from where we are seated, our collaboration and the way we interact as a community is our strength, and is also the point that stops us from moving really fast. And everyone in the room can agree to that. From my experience, I've seen when we have a common goal, we have a problem in front of us or an opportunity that we want to pursue together with the community. It's, I think, identifying and agreeing towards what are we trying to achieve at the end of the day, what are we trying to solve for, and then getting to that next step of how fast do we want to experiment, and how can we experiment in a way that we maintain, we are within the guardrails of our ecosystem. So it takes a lot of building of trust with communities that you're partnering with, especially at the initial stages of experimenting. It means giving a lot of feedback. It means opening up the space for them to have their voices heard, to have their ideas heard. Also being very transparent about what we can be able to achieve in what amount of time, because that transparency then allows the community to see, okay, we have all these things that we want to build. What can we build reasonably in this space of time? What can we push out there, test it, come back together, see what the reaction is from the community or even from the readers, and then have that collaborative session. So it's not an overnight thing to be able to move fast, but what I've seen in practice, at least from the products that I've been able to collaborate with, and even from others, is that initial mutual understanding of their goal, and then collaborating and building that trust, and continuously working on it. That makes it easier and a bit faster than, ideally how it would have been if you didn't make that take that extra step. Yeah, but it does take time to build trust and move with a certain level of speed. Yeah.
While I have you in, I wanted to touch base on diversity and the role of diversity in building, more open technology. What is it? Where are we, especially in this region, with building that which is more inclusive, which is more diverse? And I think, the kind of, if you want to speak to the challenges that you've seen, or if you want to speak to also the opportunities that have spoken to you particularly.
Hello. Yes. So of course, as part of as now FOSS community is growing, and presence of FOSS is there both virtually and physically. So there is equally this thing about the diversity and inclusion, which is more important in various aspects. Now coming from the demographic point of view, it is more likely that the presence of FOSS or the meetups, or let's say even in terms of FOSS developers or presence of contributors, it's more likely that if you are more participatory in a sort of a metro, or if you're in a sort of a developed city, then you get to find a lot of focused developers and people around in such places. On the other side, while you want to include people from various backgrounds, or places where even there is very low bandwidth, or there is very limited access to the tech or the digital infrastructure itself. So they're developing communities there where they want to understand the challenges from the root levels and also address them. But these are not as prominent as what is happening in the developed cities, or where there are frequent people around. So the gap here is due to say, for example, I want to reach out for help to someone, I need a mentor or someone. So if there's not someone around, I lose that enthusiasm within that level of time that I want to achieve something, and then it doesn't sustain. And apart from the participatory gap, there's also the technical and the knowledge and the skill gap that goes in line with understanding the improvements with the ChatGPT or anything with the progressing technology. First, to make people aware what is going on, or to at least go through or check the facts, or understand the reliability, or to make them understand about the privacy issues that's involved in it. So all of these again require a lot of resource, who need to mentor, or who need to take these to wider community and make them access and make them understand, and then use those tools and give more understanding of the bridging that knowledge gap. For example, even to integrate these modules into the existing projects is definitely an opportunity for various communities to take it further. Now there are exclusive communities for women. There are communities from the Google called the Women Tech Makers. Then I think even in Wiki we have the Women in Red, and various projects and various things that's exclusive for women in the FOSS that's happening around. Now where we want to take these is these are separate again groups where we are trying to bring in more people who are digitally not inclusive. Now we in turn the process of having these communities is to get along with the main chapters or the main communities that's lying around the streamline. but somewhere there is still a gap where this doesn't happen. There is still the bridge to, between which is not connected between the mainstream of the communities and these sort of like different programs that is focused on gender. But then where we need to aim this for is to make these as an overall impact for having diverse groups, or let's say even in terms of neurodivergent communities. This is more like off late coming in, and also there are accessibility policies, like for example the web compatibility or the web compilant and WAI, which are focused on the accessibility policies for web and other technologies. Now, if you see until the last updates, they don't include like something like artificial intelligence or like AR, VR, and high-end technologies. So with the latest ones coming in, like the third version of the web compilant policies that have come in, so they are likely to include for each of these high-end technologies as well. Where I see that's like more necessity, where it's not just the technology that's growing, but then the required accessibility features and the options to basically customize this for a better user experience for various groups to use them, or to in turn contribute to them, is more essential in that pace. Yeah.
Thank you. Venkat, just to broadly put this again in terms of the collaboration, the new players, the new technologies, communities are changing and evolving as well. Where do you see or envision the collaboration to happen? There is a need for collaboration, it is established. Do you have any ideas of what this collaboration looks like?
Let me start with a slightly different example. When we talk about community, when we talk about knowledge, I think open source, Wikipedia, let's expand the expanse a bit and talk about knowledge. I'll give you an example which many of you may not be aware, but it's known in Tamil Nadu. There's a gentleman called Mr. Vijay Kumar. He's on Twitter. He works on saving the old sculptures and artifacts that were stolen from Tamil Nadu temples. These were from the Chola eras, Pandya eras, 2000 years back. And they have been stolen and sold, and luckily the person who was caught in US and he came back and he's serving in term in a Tamil Nadu jail. But that's aside. What Mr. Vijay Kumar, he works in the IT industry in Singapore. He's collaborating. He's not a police officer or investigator, anything like that. All he's doing is, and he has written a book about it, you can search Poet in Stone or Poem in Stone, something like that. So what he's been doing is he's going through the internet to look at the photographs of these temples pre-20, 30 years. I think there is International Court of Law has some date. By then you have a proof of a photograph that this statue was in this temple. It's a proof that that temple owned the statue. Otherwise we can't get the Cholas to come back from 2000 years to say this is my property. So he's bringing those proofs and then giving it to the authorities who are, it's an international thing, it goes all the way to multinationals and all that. And so many statues, and even Prime Minister was involved last year in Australia to bring back some of the statues that we lost back. The point I'm making is he's bringing this knowledge. What he's bringing here is the expertise to search the internet, and he's collaborating with a lot of people over the internet to do this job. It's not easy. And AI or Google simple is not going to work on these things. So that is the expertise they are bringing in. And that's making a huge impact. I always believe whatever we do, whether it is open source, whatever it is, even enterprise software, should make an impact on the people that we are serving. There's no point in saying, I wrote yet another Linux distribution. It hardly makes any sense to do it. There may be very valid reasons, but then what is the impact for it? So coming back, in the communities, it's not about we starting communities, we encouraging communities, we helping them, we funding them. No, that's not how communities, in my opinion, start. Somebody has an itch, somebody has a problem. They start an open source project, they start a project, they start working on it. The community can come. Start helping and taking it forward, because the person running it will run out of juice, run out of energy. You will be single, you will get married, or she will be single, she will get married. So many things in life will happen. So what happens is, when new people coming in, what we can coach the founders is to say, how can they welcome somebody? That's not something taught in our engineering college. We don't even teach engineering college how to work with another. Labs are supposed to be meant for that, in my opinion. What engineering colleges teach you is how to collaborate with your lab mate, not on how to solve the problem which is solved 100 years back. We don't need to validate Newton's law again. That Newton has done so many years back. What we are learning is how to work with my fellow lab mate on solving a problem. And how do we write a report? You copy, you steal, you do whatever it is. Even use ChatGPT. How do you collaboratively do with two people? And the next person shouldn't reveal you copied from ChatGPT. That collaboration is what we have to learn in engineering college. Unfortunately, we are missing that, and we are teaching something else. So coming back as wikis, as you leaders here, you can tell people not to how to start a project. That I know, I can create a GitHub project, but I don't know what to do after that. When people, how do you welcome them? I put a bug. Immediately if you say you're stupid, please learn Python before you come and put a bug. That's it. Nobody is going to come to that project ever. There are a lot of unsaid signals people read. We don't teach them at all how to make them very welcoming. We talk about diversity, which is a very big problem. But even if not men-women diversity, it is people at different levels of technical knowledge. I just learned Python. I saw an interesting way to do something. Can I come and contribute? Most GitHub project, I'll be kicked out. I have to be ace developer before I can do a bug. Linux, we all know the stories with the Linux founders, how well he's on the kernel. But kernel is a different story. We can't apply that rule to kernel on some UI element open source project. So that's where I think all of you guys can train people, help them, make them welcome somebody. You have to see that I'm running this project for 4 years. If you welcome more people into the project, they're not going to spoil the project. They will take the mantle and then run it for the future. Those kind of training is what we have to give it to people. Different skills are needed. Again, there as a corporate entity, we will always look at somebody who will write the English or the text, somebody who will test, somebody who will dev. I think open source projects also today need all those skill sets. We should be welcoming even non-developers to open source projects. And that's where my earlier point about ChatGPT, no-code platforms come in. If I have an idea for an application, I don't need to know coding or a little bit of coding. I should be still able to contribute to those projects. I think that's the direction the community should be discussing.
That's putting the perspective on the community of what the community can do. Do you have anything to share from the industry perspective as well? What is it that organizations can do to make this space more welcoming, to build technologies that are welcoming for communities?
See, organizations are always top-down. Though people talk about no hierarchy, startup, flat structure, organizations are always driven hierarchy-wise. That's how the structure is also. Something goes wrong, the government is going to catch the MD or the director who signs in the dotted lines. That's how the organizations work. So a lot of education awareness needs to go to the entrepreneurs also, because they are the people who are generating the jobs. People here are employed somewhere in some organization, whether it is startup or large companies, or they are a freelancer, but they are working with entrepreneurs, business decision makers. We need to target. We can't be only talking to the developers who are the sold, who are the converted. We need to go to the enterprise owners, business owners, go to the MBA colleges, tell them about community, open source projects, what it is, and then tell them how can they join and how can they make their people collaborate. Again, I don't want them to do a mandate, oh, all my people will do 25% open source project. I think we know where that experiment went in a large organization. You can't mandate to be contributing to open source. I can't pay you salary and say, I need you to contribute to open source 25%. Doesn't work. I give you a good conducive environment where you are satisfied, you have free time, your work-life balance is done, you will automatically decide to go and contribute to open source. This can't be I can't say, okay, CEO slide, this year we'll do 25% open source. Doesn't work like that. So I think education awareness on a larger thing, and also with the policymakers, our laws and patents and things like that also have to be conducive to open source. I won't say it does not, but I think a lot more needs to be done. Sorry, I have a lot of opinions. Let me refrain from
That's why
sharing
you're
too much
here.
of them.
That's great. Thank you. Purity, to you.
Yeah, I think if we look around even to organizations that are for profit, if you look keenly, you'll see that there's always an element of community. In as much as they build their products with a revenue target in mind or a commercial target, I think they've realized you cannot detach how successful your product will be or how successful the business will be if you don't have an element of community. So top of mind, I don't know if you guys know Miro, even Google, there's always a community aspect that they introduce to their ecosystem that allows them to, glean out of that community in terms of feedback, in terms of evolution of their products and their solutions. So for us at the movement, it's a big thing. It's how we do our work. But even from other organizations where it's more commercial, I think they recognize that you cannot work in isolation. You have to build communities, and it takes so much to build a strong community around your products or around your solutions. So, yeah.
Hi. So I think Venkat said right. It starts from the organizations who are using open source. FOSS should start giving credits to the open source projects, the contributors, individual contributors, just by acknowledging it at the footer of their website or their products. At FOSS United, we have a similar kind of activities programs where we reach out to the company's CTO, the technical director, and talk about why it is important to give credit and to the contributors, if not financially, but at least acknowledging them on their website. Netflix does that. A lot of companies does that. We have a FOSS place just to asking CTO, the director of technology, to sign and every year do some a kind of blog talking about the software they used. Also, we also work with government. We work with think tanks, and we are trying to create. We are trying to work on a draft, which our goal is to that the government should be using FOSS. The public money should not be wasted in the proprietary tools. Billions of dollar goes to acquire, not billions of dollars, millions of dollar goes to acquire the proprietary tools every year, to procure the proprietary tools, the softwares. And again, it's top-down approach. The developers cannot do much from their end. It has to come from the top down. Yeah.
I just make a point. Vishal, what he mentioned reminded me an example I think that's worth sharing. In Tamil Nadu government 12, 13 years back, I was instrumental in the GO for Unicode use as Tamil. That was issued, and then only open source fonts. And we all thought we were fighting, or I won't say fighting, that's impolite. We were working with the government of the times about usage of Unicode in their day-to-day business. But we still found they were using proprietary fonts, and government was paying taxpayer money to buy those fonts, and you can't use it. They are not Unicode, so text interchange can't happen. And that's been the way for many, many years. But currently, the last couple of years, I can't take any credit because I was not involved. Somebody in the government or in the community thought, okay, we are doing this wrongly. The GO is there about usage of Unicode. GO has been there about usage of open source fonts and all that. It didn't happen. Now, they have been doing now every district trainers from the community are working in the collectorate office and training these people who work in the collectorate office, corporations, local municipalities, etc. Teaching them how to use, you won't believe, keyboards on local language, which are open source or which are Unicode compatible, which are out there available. And the last, I think, 6-7 months, they have covered almost every district of Tamil Nadu. So that, I think, is the right way to do. Even though you have a GO, it's not working, then people in the field, the collector is going to say, where is my letter? He's not going to say, oh, is this letter typed in a Unicode font? Is it in open source? Is it in the GO? No. And the way you should work, if you work with the bureaucracy and the ministers and their secretaries, you will find the system even works. I've seen them very closely. It's so they just work on the last minute, no planning. Again, I'm generalizing, please forgive me if anybody is from that thing. I'm just painting a picture to communicate a point. So I think going and training these people on how to use these tools which are out there will go a long way than going with a GO, going with a stick. And law, we think law will solve. If law solves problem, we'll have everybody wearing helmets and driving correctly. We have enough laws. We just don't need, it's better we remove laws. And we have to create a culture where this becomes prevalent. So, sorry.
This is great. In fact, this is a great point to conclude things as well. I also want to have some time for the last Q&A session. We're going to cut it a little short, but for the audience, if they have any questions. Yes, we'll go to
Me making an observation rather than a question. This is a bit disappointing because we are forgetting our history, and there's a certain deliberate attempt to fudge the history. I think that we need to remember that free software in particular goes back 20 years before Wikipedia, before Creative Commons, before anything that came on the scene. And these are the guys who struggled and came up and built an alternative, where the alternative has proven to be over the years better than the real thing. It called for a certain sacrifice, and today we are forgetting the details of the sacrifice. There was a lot of extremism there, and it was extremism that kept the movement going. Today, after 83 to now 40 years, it's on bad days. But we should not forget the contribution it made. And if those ideas were not there and they were not diluted, we would have not been here. That's my point.
Love that, thank you.
Several times Microsoft, I'm trying to see if Microsoft can help something to do with Wiki. So there was a Wiki Project Tiger program that was done, sponsored by Google. So that happened for a couple of years, and I don't know what happened, and it seems to have stopped now. So, and yesterday Lisa was talking about fundraising or finding alternative ways to get some revenue. So it's kind of, is there any possibility, or what are your thoughts, what you can do to organize something like that Project Tiger program, collaboration with Microsoft or any other giants like that with Wikipedia?
I don't work for Microsoft. I've never worked for Microsoft. Whatever I said
okay.
doesn't involve them anyway.
Okay.
They don't even know I'm here, or they probably even don't know I exist. So I was a partner to them. I'm a Microsoft Regional Director. That's an honorary title. They give it to professionals.
Okay.
So no way I talk or represent Microsoft in any capacity. Having said that, I have no idea about this. If I get a chance, I meet the community people in Microsoft next time, I'll ask them.
Okay, thank you.
And we are running because they walked the path for us. There is no way this community, we need the community for technologies to grow. We need communities to actually think, collaborate, and perhaps help us improve a lot. There's a long road ahead still. We get a little digressed from the topics, but at the heart of everything, there has to be community work. There has to be support from, be it proprietary models or open source tech companies. At the heart of everything, not only just the users, but the communities need to feel encouraged and empowered at every step. And that's, I think, something we'd like to close with. Thank you.